So what did we discuss yesterday? We have seen a business requirement and we have identified the dimensions, correct? And we have also understood the architecture of Essbase. So I said Essbase is a three-tier architecture. You have a client tier, you have a middle tier, and you have a database tier. So client tier is for end users who would analyze the data connecting to Essbase, and client tier is also for developers for us to create the dimensions that we have identified. So client tier for us would be the Essbase console where we log in and create the dimensions and the various other things that we do using console. In the middle tier, we start the services basically, and in the database tier, you have the Essbase server where all your data and metadata would be saved in your Essbase server. Okay, so
Okay.
so this is the architecture that we have seen. You can see the screen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the architecture that we have seen. You have a client tier, so in which I log into the Essbase Administration Services console, which in turn communicates with your HTTP, and it goes to your administration services, and through TCP/IP it goes to your Essbase server, and this is where it stores. Okay, so I would log in. So before I log into the administration services console, in the middle tier I would start the services so that I can log into the console successfully and do the work whatever I want to do. So to start the services, I go to start, run, and say services.msc. Click OK.
Okay.
Okay, so this is what it comes up, and so these are all the So what we do is that first these are all the Hyperion related services which are not yet started. So I would start the service. So before, you can start in any order that you like, but the first service that I start is Oracle Process Manager. In the bracket you have something called OHS instance. OHS stands for Oracle HTTP server, which is nothing but my web server. So if you see this diagram here, so this is the service that I'm starting, HTTP. So because console communicates with HTTP, so this HTTP has to be up and running. Okay, and the HTTP server that we would be using is Oracle HTTP server. That is this server. So I would right click and start the service. Okay, so this is started. Sometimes
Okay.
it so happens that this service would not start. So this service, understand that this service would work on a port 19,000. 19,000 is the port number on which this service would run. Getting it?
Where is that 19,000? In the sense, like that is a standard
Yeah.
server port runs?
That is a standard port number while doing the installations and configurations. There is a port number which is visible to you, and it would deploy on 19.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
understood.
this says like 319 something like that.
No, this is the code that it gives you. You do not see the port number for each and every product. You have a port by default. You get a port number.
Okay.
Okay, so Oracle Process Manager, it runs on a port 19,000. That is a default port.
Okay.
Any project you take, they would run it in 19,000 only.
Okay.
Okay. Sometimes it so happens that the service would not start. Now, say for example, this is services which is started. Okay, I can also go and see in my task manager. Okay, so basically it starts nothing but your Apache service. It starts. Okay, so in the backend, it service it runs a process called Apache. So I close this, and sometimes it so happens that these services would not start. So if the service doesn't start, you need to first go and see the log files. Okay, the log files of this product is basically found it in. Now I go to, I have installed Hyperion in C drive. I go to C, Oracle, middleware, user underscore projects, EPM system 1. There is a folder called HTTP config. You have something called OHS here, diagnostics, logs. You have OHS logs, OHS underscore component. So these are all the log files which it runs. Okay, so basically you have to catch hold of this log file and OHS underscore component log file, so to see what the error message is. So when you open this is what it you know gives you. Okay, just if it is an error, if the services doesn't start from the backend, come here uh, and search with the name called error. It would show you what the error is, and you will try to understand. If you see, starting the thread to listen to the port 19,000. Okay,
Where is it?
here it's, if you see.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So basically it runs on a port
But what kind
19,000.
of errors it can throw off? Yeah.
No, the errors can be
What kind of errors it can?
um, no, error can be that no, if sometimes it so happens that your IP would change, you know. So if the IP changes, the services would. If you see, this IP address is this. Sometimes it so happens that someone has changed the IP, or it can be if you're doing a copy, so then the IP would be changed. So if the IP is changed, then sometimes it so happens. I mean, it would not start the service. Okay.
So will you be giving some information of how to fix these things or something like that? Or
No, if the IP is, then you have to go to these, see what is the IP, and the IP would be definitely be changed. Sometimes I've seen this error where in our case, the IP was overwritten. So in that case, the service did not start for us. Then we had to come
mm-hmm.
down and go to the host file and update and I go to this. Okay, I go to run and I go to etc file, and there is a host file here. You need to update the correct IP address in the host file. Open it in a text pad and you update the host file, and that's how the issue got resolved in our case. Okay, or
Mm-hmm.
you can search it in your Google stating that HTTP server is not starting. So you'll get so many answers in it,
Okay.
various answers to the various problems. Okay, so this is the first service that I start, which starts in port 19,000, and you also know the log files in the backend where it is captured. So this is the log file in the backend.
Okay.
The second service that I start would be your Hyperion Foundation Services managed server. Right click and start the service. Hyperion Foundation Services managed server is nothing but my shared services, which is used to create user IDs and passwords. So that is the reason I start this service. I right click and start the service. Okay, so it is started, and this Hyperion Foundation Services managed server would work on a port 28080. That is the port number of this foundation services. And in case if this service doesn't start, it basically goes and captures the logs in this particular path. By default, it is C Oracle middleware user underscore projects EPM system 1. From EPM system 1, I do not go to HTTP config. I go to diagnostics here. From there, go to logs, and you have something called services folder, and this is where it is getting captured. So it will actually start the service. We will wait for some time.
So is it like on a regular basis we should do it, or on a daily basis, or when do we do this?
No, the
Starting of
services,
this
no, the
service
services
working.
would be up and running 24 by 7. It's only when there is any maintenance activity, or if there is any, if you want to apply the patch, then we stop the services, apply the patch, and start the services.
Okay.
Or if there is any maintenance in Windows, or say for example, you have to apply the patches in Windows, or you have to apply patches in your Hyperion world, in Hyperion, then we stop the services and start the services. Or else you would never stop the services on your own. So to stop the services, it is again a downtime which is taken from the client, that this is the activity that we would be doing, and give a justification why we are shutting down the services. Then that request should go for an approval, and the business would approve it, and then you stop or start the service. Or else at any given point of time, the services will be up and running in production environment. It is also very critical that you do not stop the services.
Yeah.
If you are stopping the services, which means that the users would not be able to do anything. So it is That's what.
Okay.
It's only from the interview point of view. They would ask you do you know what is the port number of HTTP server, or have you ever faced any issues? You know, so that is the reason we would, so we are telling you where is the log files of each product and what is the port number of
Okay.
each product.
For this, it is port number 2020, right?
28080.
Oh,
080.
28080.
Yeah, for this foundation. So foundation services means that what is the meaning of foundation services? It is nothing but your shared services, and
Where you
where you create your user IDs and passwords. So that is the reason we
maintenance of the.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that is the reason we have started this service, and the log files of this product is captured in the backend in this path.
Hmm.
Okay, so it has grown to 7 KB if you see here.
Yeah.
Okay, now you got a message. You should get a message called server started in running mode. Okay, so basically it
Okay.
sometimes so happens that you would get a message called, I mean, if you get this message called server started in running mode, then that is correct. Now, which means that this services started perfectly fine. Sometimes it so happens that the services would start in admin mode. So if you get a message called server started in admin mode, then there is a problem with the service. Basically, it would show that services is started here. But when you go and check
Hmm.
your logs, it would show that it is running in admin mode. So if it is admin mode, then there is a problem. So basically, when it is admin mode, which means that when this service is starting, what it would do is that as a part of installations and configurations, we configure with a relational database. That relational database can be either a Oracle database or it can be a SQL database. We configure the product. So when you configure it, there are some registry information which are stored in a relational database. So it picks up those registry information from the database and it starts the service. Okay, and basically, sometimes it so happens that if the relational database is down, then the services would go in admin mode. Or if the password of that database is expired, even that the services would go in admin mode. So these are the two main situations where the services would not start and it would go in admin mode. So whenever it goes to admin mode, the first thing that you have to check is that whether your relational database is up and running. If the database is up and running, see to that the password of that uh,
But
schemas has got expired or not. So generally it would get expired, and so that's how you would rectify the issue.
and where do we check this database, relational database on this schema services?
I mean, you would take the help of a DBA who would help you in checking this for you.
Okay.
Okay. So basically, what happens is that if you see here, it as I said yesterday that apart from Hyperion, that products that you install, you also get WebLogic also. WebLogic is my application server. That's what we say. And basically, this application server would start this service. WebLogic is very important. So the service is getting started by WebLogic only. So WebLogic server is very important, which would help you in starting this service.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So to log into WebLogic, there is again a port called 7001 through which we log into WebLogic. I would also log into the WebLogic, and I'll also show you. You can also check the status there as well in your WebLogic as well. So WebLogic is very heart of the product. So any performance
Okay.
tuning would be done from WebLogic side. So there are a lot of things that can be done through WebLogic side, and even a lot of issues can be resolved through WebLogic side as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is second service that I start, and the third service that I start is my Oracle Process Manager. In the bracket, you have something called EPM System 1, which is nothing but my Essbase server. So which means that if you see this, so I'm starting this service. Okay, the component of Essbase
Mm-hmm.
server. Essbase server.
Okay.
Okay. So what all things that you do here should be saved in a Essbase server. So this Essbase server should be up and running.
Okay.
So I go and start the service, Essbase server. So Essbase server would work on a port 1423. Okay, that is the
Okay.
port number of Essbase server. The log file of this Essbase server is again located in the backend. Diagnostics logs. You have something called OPMN, bracket OPMN. So this is, if you open this, so this is where it starts the service. Okay, so basically Essbase server is started. So if you see this, these are the two important files where you see whether the Essbase server is started or not. Clear? Getting it?
Okay. Any particular things that we should concentrate on? Like the earlier one, it showed it is started, right? And here it says like started.
Yeah, the process is alive, and so that's what it says. You can also check the status of your Essbase server. There are so many reasons why these services would also not start. Basically, so I would tell you over a period of time you would understand why these services would not start. But you can also check from your command prompt as well. So I go to EPM system 1 bin folder. So I copy this. I go to a command prompt, change the directory. You can also say opmn dot bat and ss status. It's not here. It's spelling mistake. So if you see, Essbase agent is alive.
So it's OPMCTL.
Yeah, OPMN CTL. OPMN stands for Oracle.
OPML.
Yeah, OPMN stands for Oracle Process Manager Notification Server. Okay, so
Okay.
opmn.bat status. It will also show you the status of your Essbase, whether it is alive or down. So in this case, it is alive, which means that the services started.
Okay.
Okay, so I have started this service, Oracle Process Manager, and the next service that I would start is your Hyperion Administration Services. Basically, if you see the diagram here, so this is the service that I'm starting. Okay, so I come here and start the service. Okay, so these are all the services, and the log files of this product is again in the backend. I go to okay, diagnostics, logs, services folder, and this is the service name. Earlier this was the foundation services. This is the log file. For this it is the log file. Yes. Okay. So again you will get a message called the services are running mode. We have to wait for some time, and you would get a message called the services started in running mode. Okay. Okay. The message like this. So we would wait for some time, and you would be able to see that message. So these are the only services that you start to work on Essbase. So if you're working on FDME, then we start the FDME service. If you're working on financial management, then I start the financial management service. Okay, for each product, you have the service running in the backend. So Hyperion Administration Services, Java Web Application would work on a port 10080. That is the default port number of this product.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I know that Oracle Process Manager OHS starts in port 19,000. Okay, EPM System 1 Essbase server runs on a port 1423. Foundation services would work on a port 28080. Hyperion Administration Services would work on a port 10080. In the same way, other products would also work on different ports.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if I have not installed planning, I would also install the planning. So I would also show you, as a part of the installation, you also get the port numbers, that I'll show you. Okay, so we would expand double click on this. Okay, so it is still taking time.
So this installation is also part of the course itself. I think we should learn that as well.
No, I can teach you the installation as well. So if you want, we'll see that later on. I will also show you the installation.
Okay.
So when you double click, so now if you see, this is grown to 7 KB, and if you see here,
now it has it.
yeah, the server started running.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a message that you have to get. Okay, so this is what I've started. Then what I would do is that I would log into the, now I can log into the console and create the dimensions that we have identified. So to log into the console, so I go to start, all programs, Oracle EPM system. I go to Essbase and say start administration services console. Okay, so the administration server, basically it is the server where this is running, so this server, this is the, now say for in the real-time world, all the products of Hyperion would not be installed in a single box, so it would be in a distributed environment. If it is a distributed environment, you have to see where this service is running, and the server name of this, and put that server name here. So in this case it would be local host. So but in the real-time project it would not be the local host, but it is the computer name where this product is running. Okay, so username is admin by default, password is password that I have given while installation, and click OK. So I was able to connect because I may have started this service. If you have not started this service, then you will not be able to connect to the product. Okay, so from here what I would do is that I would connect to my Essbase server, correct? Okay, this might be running, this might be running in a different box, and this might be running in a different box or a different server. This can be in Windows and this can be in Linux, So from here, what I need to do is that when you expand your Essbase server, system doesn't, because this is the first time that you're logging in, Essbase, it doesn't know which Essbase server that you're connecting to. From Essbase Administration Services console, you can connect to production Essbase server, or you can connect to a development, or you can connect to a QA. So here you need to tell to the system to which Essbase server you want to connect to. So right click and say add Essbase server. We are adding a server here. Okay. So when you're adding a server here, it is saying was give me the where it is running. Okay. The system name. Okay. I can select the server cluster name here, or it can be Windows, the computer name, because my Essbase server is running the same box. So I can select Essbase cluster 1. Uncheck this. By default, username is admin, password is password. Click OK. Okay, now it is connected. So what did I do? So I, from Essbase console, I've connected to a particular Essbase server. Clear? Okay, so this Essbase server can be a production server, or it can be a development server, or it can be a QA server. So whichever name that you give, whichever IP address that you give from here, it connects to that server. Clear?
Okay.
Okay. So when you expand this Essbase cluster here, you will be able to see something called applications. When you expand your applications, it will show you all the applications that are in this server. Okay, so these are all the default applications which comes as a part of the installations and configurations. So you have connected to this Essbase server, under which you have all the applications, the default applications which are running in this under this server. Okay, understood till here? Any doubts you have?
Yeah, got it.
Okay, great. So before I create, so yesterday we have identified some dimensions, correct? So we have identified time, product, customer, region. So we have to create those dimensions in Essbase now. So before I create those dimensions in Essbase, so basically I right click on my applications here and say create. So before we work on, or before you create any application, before you create any dimensions, you have to create an application first. So how do I create an application? Right click and say create application. So it is showing me, do you want to create an application using block storage or an aggregate storage? Okay, so we have to select one of these and we have to work on it. So basically what we are doing is that, so we are going with a case study here, which is called Bicor. And now this is what we have identified yesterday. This is what we are, we have identified the business requirement, and we came out with the dimensions. So what we are doing is that this is a case study and there are some exercises related to it, and we are going exercise one by one. So I click on exercise 1.1. He's asking us to start the services, which we have already done it. So he's asking us to start all the services, so which we have already started the services. Clear?
Mm-hmm.
So he's asking us exercise number 2, accessing administration services console. So perform the following task to familiarize yourself with the administration services console. Open the administration services console. Okay, explore the navigation hierarchy, verify that. Okay, so this is what we're doing one by one. Okay, so we'll be completing all these exercises. Okay, till 19.2.
Okay.
So we have the first exercise is completed, which means that we have already started the services and you know how to start the service, correct? And what are the services that you have to start. Second exercise is
Yep.
to log on to the console and familiarize yourself with the Essbase console that we are doing it right now. Okay, so this is Essbase console. Clear? Okay, so before you create all the dimensions that we have identified, we need to create an application first. To create an application, I right click on my application and say create application. I need to select whether you want to create an application using aggregate storage or a block storage. We call it as ASO and we call this as a BSO, block storage application, aggregate storage application. Definite interview question. They'll ask you what is the difference between ASO and BSO. Okay, or they can ask you, have you worked on, with what kind of database have you worked on? Okay, so when you say what kind of database have you worked on, then you say you worked on block storage database. We would be covering both. We would be covering both aggregate storage as well as block storage. But you say that you can tell them that I've worked on both ASO as well as BSO. So I would also be telling you the difference between aggregate storage and block storage after some time. But understand that there are two types of storage for us, something called aggregate storage and something called block storage. Okay, so from 11.1.2.4 version is a new version that we are working on. We also got one more type of storage, which is called hybrid database or hybrid analysis. So we'll talk about that hybrid analysis also later on. Okay, so understand that there is also something called hybrid analysis in the new version which has come up, which was not there in earlier version. It is only come up with 11.1.2.4.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll be telling that the difference between ASO and BSO, and in the end we'll also talk about what is called hybrid analysis. The reason why I'm saying hybrid analysis, if you put that, if in your resume, if you put that I have worked on 11.1.2.4, and you also say that I've also worked on 11.1.2.3 in my earlier project, they might also ask you that, what is the difference, what are the major differences that you have seen from earlier version to this version, or what are the new features which is added in 11.1.2.4. So you can tell them that there is something called hybrid analysis which has been added in the new version, which was not there earlier.
Okay.
Okay. But understand that definite entry question, they'll ask you what is the difference between ASO and BSO. The first question when you sit an interview and when you tell about yourself, they'll ask you, can you tell me the difference between ASO or BSO? Or they'll first ask you, what kind of database have you worked on? Now when you say I've worked on block storage, then they'll ask you, do you know what is the difference between aggregate storage and a block storage? Okay. So we would see the difference later on, but I would click on this using block storage here. It is asking for the application name. Okay, we need to give the name of the application. The application name should not cross more than 8 characters, and the application name should not start with any special character. So the application name that I give would be BigCorp. That is the name of the application. There is something called Unicode mode here. I can check this or uncheck this. By default, it is unchecked. So if you check this Unicode mode, which means that you're telling to the system that this application would be a multi-character support or a multi-language support. So which means that now I can view this application in a different language altogether if it is a Unicode mode application. I would uncheck this. Generally, it would be unchecked in the real-time projects also. So I would click on OK. Okay, now Essbase is creating an application for us. So it is created an application for us called BigCorp. Okay, so when you see the diagram here, so I've created an application using administration services console. Where does it get saved? In turn gets saved in your Essbase server, correct? So what all things that you're doing here, where is it gets saved in your Essbase server, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So my Essbase server, I have also installed my Essbase server in the same box or the same server. Okay. So basically it goes and saves in the backend in this particular path. It goes to Oracle middleware user underscore projects EPM system 1. It goes to Essbase server 1 app, and this is the BigCorp okay in the backend. So it goes and saves in the backend in the form of file structure, and it saves it creates a folder in the backend in Essbase server. So when you double click on this folder, by default it creates .app file and .instance file in the backend. Clear? Understood? So what all things that you do from here, whenever you create an application, it gets saved in an Essbase server, and the path is this: Oracle middleware user underscore projects EPM system 1 Essbase server 1 app BigCorp. Okay, so in app it would be there. All your applications should be there in app folder in the backend. Clear?
Okay.
Understood? Right. So I come here, right click and say create a database. I create a database, okay, with the name called finance. Okay, again the same rules apply. The database name should not cross more than 8 characters, and it should not exceed more than 8 characters. I can also give same name called BigCorp, even that is correct. I can also give the same name as an application name, even that is correct, it would accept it. Okay, or you can give any name. I would say it as finance. You have something called normal database and you have something called currency database. 99.99% we would go with the normal database. Currency database is used if you're working on currency related applications. Then the chances are high that you go with a currency database, or else you would normally go with a normal database. Okay, there is something called allow duplicate names. I can check this or uncheck this. By default it is unchecked. So it is unchecked. When it is unchecked, which means that Essbase will not allow duplicate names. When you check this, Essbase will allow duplicate names. So what does it mean? It means that now say for example, I have a dimension called region. Okay, under region you have say for example AP. Under AP you have say for example you have Hyderabad. Now say for example you take Pakistan. Under Pakistan also you have Hyderabad. So this is wrong. Basically it's a duplicate name, correct? So when you uncheck this, okay, Essbase will not allow duplicate names like this. Clear? Now say for example you have a dimension called customer. Under customer you have Vijay. Under also you have something called Vijay. So Essbase will not allow duplicate names. Okay. So when you uncheck this, Essbase will not allow duplicate names. When you check this, Essbase will allow duplicate names. So it is always recommended that you uncheck this duplicate names so that each and every name would be a unique name in Essbase.
Okay.
Clear? And I click on OK here. So it has created a database and it in turn saves in a Essbase server. So where does it get saved? Under app, you have a folder called BigCorp. So inside the BigCorp, it creates a folder called finance. So when you double click on this finance, by default, it creates all these files by default. Okay, it creates a file called DB, which stands for database. It creates a file called with the name called .dbb, database backup. It creates a folder called ESM, stands for kernel, KERNAL. It creates a file called OTL, which stands for outline. It creates a file called .tct. It stands for transaction control table. So these are all the default files which are getting created as soon as you create the database. Okay, do not delete or do not rename or do not try to do anything with these files, because when you do anything, your whole database would get corrupted. So do not do any changes with these files. Understand that these are the files which are created as soon as you create the database in the back from the Essbase console. So whenever you create the database, so these are the default files which are created in the backend. Okay, so
What is the first file, first folder?
this trig, you don't have to worry about this trig folder. It is empty here. Okay, but these are the default files which are created.
Okay.
Okay, so they'll ask you an interview. they can ask you, can you tell me what are the files which are created in the backend as soon as you create the database? Okay, so it creates database DB, DBB, ESM, OTL, and TCT.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, clear. So sometimes it so happens, over a period of time, so I'll tell you if the files gets corrupted, what you have to do. That we'll also see later. But at this point of time, understand that these are the default files which are created as soon as you create the database. Okay. So come here and I expand this database. Double click on the outline here. Now this is a blank outline. So this is where I create the dimensions that we have identified. Clear?
Okay.
Okay, clear. So the first dimension that I would create is, so we have what are the dimensions that we have identified? We have identified something called time, customer, product, region, accounts. So these are the dimensions that we have identified. So these are the dimensions I'll be creating here. So right click on this outline and say add child. Okay. And I would be creating a dimension called a time dimension. Okay. Okay. So press enter here. Okay. Press escape to go to the back. So this is the time dimension that I've created. So under this time dimension, right click, add child. So before I do this, so we'll go with these exercises, what he is like to asking us to do it. So this is what we have created, block storage. Have created an application with the name called BigCorp, and the database name have given it as finance, but he has given it as sales. It's a normal database. So he's asking us to create all these dimensions like year total, which is nothing but my time dimension. He's asking us to create a dimension called accounts. He's asking us to create a dimension called scenario. So under year total, he's asking us to create quarter one, Jan, Feb, and March, and the remaining members. So it has to be like this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we would be creating a dimension called year total, under which I'll be creating all these members. Okay. So instead of time, I would delete these. Okay. I would create a member, right click, add child. I would create a dimension called year total. Okay. Under this, I would be creating add child. I would be creating a member called quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four. Press escape. Under quarter one, right click, add child. Okay, so I would be creating Jan, Feb, and March, because the reason being that if you see this case study here, we are only going with the case study here. And when I see the reports under quarter one, the client has got Jan, Feb, and March. Okay, so and that is the reason under quarter one I'll be creating Jan, Feb, and March. So it is not always true that under quarter one you would get Jan, Feb, and March. It purely depends upon the client requirement. So under quarter one, the clients can have June, July, August also, or April, May, June. So what is his closing? Okay, how does he wants to analyze it? So that would come under your quarter one. Okay, Jan, Feb, March. Okay, so if I press escape here, when I right click on May, I would not say add child, but I would say add sibling. Okay, we have understood what is a sibling, what is a child, right? In the previous classes. When I say sibling, it will
Okay.
be the same. Okay, June. Okay, right click on quarter one. I say add child because I want to add a children under quarter three. Okay, July, press enter, August, September. Okay, and say verified. So it is verified successfully. So Essbase will check whether there are any duplicate names or not. If it is a duplicate name, it will not save it. Okay, click OK and save it. It is saved. So where it is getting saved, so it saves in the backend. Okay, in this file. So all your the structure or the metadata would be saved in this OTL file, which is outline file. Very important. If you delete this file, your structure would go. Clear? Get it, everyone? You understood, Raghav?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, so all your structure would be saved in the backend in the file called OTL file, which means that it is metadata. So I'm creating the structure or I'm creating a metadata now. So all this metadata, when you click on save here, so it is getting saved in the backend in this file, OTL file in the backend. So very important. If I delete this file, then your metadata is completely gone. So it would be empty here in the back, here. Your structure would be
Yeah.
gone. Okay. So that is the reason. Okay. You have to be careful with all those files in the backend. Okay.
Okay.
So I've created a year total dimension, which I've created quarter 1 to quarter 4. Okay. So as I said yesterday that in the previous class, okay, so this year total is my dense dimension, correct? So time would generally be a dense dimension. Okay. So right click on
Yeah.
this, go to edit
Yes.
member properties, and it is dimension storage is dense. Okay. So system itself is taking as a dense dimension. I cannot change it to a sparse. Okay. Okay. If you want to change any dimensions from a dense to sparse or a sparse to dense, now what I need to do is that now you need to go to the properties tab here, expand this, auto configure, make it as false. Now I can change any dimension from dense to sparse or sparse to dense. But here total is a dense dimension. I would still make it as a dense. I would still make this auto configure as true here. Okay, so that is the reason it is taking it as a dense dimension. So this is a dense dimension. So I know that time is a dense dimension. I will keep it as it is. Okay, clear? Understood till here? Any doubts you have?
No.
Okay, great. So you know that this is a time dimension, but Essbase does not know this is a time dimension. So you need to tell to system that this is my time dimension. So how do I tell to the system that this is my time dimension? I right click on my year total. I go to
But
edit.
then how did it recognize that it is a dense dimension then?
Now Essbase will automatically identify it. We don't have to worry about it. So if you want to
Even
see,
sparse also it will.
uh, no, it will put that if you any. So how does it does is that so any dimension that you create first would be a dense dimension.
Oh, okay, okay, got it
Okay,
now.
okay. So even if you put under outline, if you create a product dimension, it would be taken as a dense dimension.
Okay.
Okay. So this year total, it is a time dimension. It represents your time. It represents your months. But Essbase does not know this is my time dimension. Okay. Now I need to tell to Essbase that this is my time dimension. Now how do I tell it? I right click on this. I go to edit member properties. Okay. Under um, dimension type. Okay. By default it is none. Now you see it is a time. Click OK.
Okay.
Now Essbase knows that this is a time dimension. Clear? No? You got this time here, right? Now Essbase now knows this is my time dimension. Okay. So when I say time
Okay. Okay.
as a time dimension,
Sir,
when you say
please uncheck the time. Go on same option again, please.
mhm.
Okay, right click and then.
Dimension type, you set as time. By default
Okay.
it is none, you set as time.
Okay.
Clear? No? Click OK. Okay. So if you want to understand, if you want to imagine it in a form of a block, how do you imagine it? So this is how it gets, right? So how is a block created? Block is created for each and every unique combination of a sparse dimension member. So block would have all your dense dimension members. You have Jan, Feb, March, okay, quarter 1, April, May, June, quarter 2, July, August, September, October, November, December, quarter 4. Okay. Okay. So this is what you have done. Okay. So if you want to imagine it, this is how you imagine it in the form of a block. So we have created this. Now the structure we are creating now. Clear now? Understood? So you say it is a time dimension. So when you say time as a time dimension, Essbase will give you some additional properties to it. It will give you some out-of-the-box functionalities. When you say time, it is not mandatory in each and every product you have to say this. But if you say this, Essbase will give you some additional properties to it. The additional property being something called dynamic time series. So when you right click on this, you get something called dynamic time series when you say time as a time dimension. So when you click on this dynamic time series, you get all these different series of members. You get something called HTD, history to date, YTD, year to date, STD, season to date, PTD, period to date, quarter to date, month to date, week to date, and day to date. So these are the different members that you get when I say time as a time dimension. Essbase will give you some out-of-the-box functionality, and the out-of-the-box functionality being dynamic time series. In the dynamic time series, you get all these members. The main important, the reason why we need this dynamic time series is that it is one of the common requirement that we get from the client that they need something called, now say for example, if you see, I have a member called sales. In the month of Jan, my sales are 150. Okay. In the month of Feb, it is 50. In the month of March, it is 200. In the month of April, it is okay 600. Okay. Now the client would come up and say, boss, I would like to see in a report what are my till date business that I've done. Okay. So what is my till date business that can you show me a report which shows me till date business from Jan to current month? Then we enable something called year to till date. Okay, then that is the reason. Then we come up with these dynamic time series. Then we understand, oh, okay, the client is asking that he wants to know the till date business. Then we enable time. Then we say time as a time dimension, and enable one of these uh, enable one of these dynamic time series. Enable one of these member. The client is saying he wants to know year to till date. I would enable this year to till date. Okay, getting it?
So when you say it's not like multiple, right? You can't select multiple things.
No, you can also select multiple as well. Okay, you just have to say now year total here. If you see, it's in generation 1. You say it as generation 1. Okay, we talked about generations. So this dimension name is called generation 1. Quarters are at generation 2. Jan, Feb, and March are generation 3. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
You need to tell the system in which generation the quarters are at. Just say quarters are at generation 2. Click OK. So then this dynamic time series is enabled, which is called YTD. Then how do the end user would see the report? He would see something called YTD. In the report, he would see something called, okay, and give the current month in whichever month he is in. I would say April here, assuming that April is my current month. So what Essbase would do is that it would dynamically add all these members, and it would put the value as 1000, and it will show the value in the reports to the end user. So say for example the current month is May, for example. So in the month of May, I have a sales of 500. So YTD of May in my report. Okay, so this would add up dynamically. It will add all these members, and it will show the value as 1500 here.
Mm-hmm.
Getting it? If it is quarter to till date, okay. Now say for example, I would say I've also enabled QTD, quarter to till date. Assuming that quarter to till date, I'm in the second quarter. Okay, it is May here again. The bracket, if the end user puts May here, so it will add up only these two, and it will get the value as value here.
Yeah.
Clear? No? Understood? Okay.
Yeah.
So this dynamic time series will help me to understand what is a till date business. So it can be either year to till date, or quarter to till date, or month to till date, or season to date. So what all you have different options here that you can enable it. So most of the times in the projects they would enable something called QTD and YTD.
So now you have done it for the whole what is it like generations, right?
Yes, I would have enabled
Because
YTD.
you have done it at the
Yeah.
YTD and the QTD because when you have got it.
That is true. I mean, we enabled YTD and QTD because my hierarchy supports quarters and years. That is the reason I've enabled YTD and QTD. Now it doesn't support seasons. That is the reason I've not enabled season to date. Getting it? So most of the projects you would have it, and definite entry question. They'll ask you what is the additional properties that you get when you set time as a time dimension, or they'll ask you what is dynamic time series, what is the use of it. Okay. So it will help me to understand your till date business in the reports. That is the reason we say time as a time dimension. and enable this dynamic time series, one of these members, so that it will help me to understand my till date business in the reports.
Okay.
Okay. Understood till here?
Yep.
Understood? Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah, I understood, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So we will also talk about alias. Now, what is an alias? Alias is an alternate name for a given member. And why do we need alias? We need alias for the better readability, or the users can analyze the reports in they would able to understand the reports better. That is the reason we need an alias. So alias is an alternate name. So now say for example, I want to give QTR1 as a quarter1 as an alias. Right click on this QTR1, go to edit member properties. So most of the things would be under edit member properties only. I right click on this edit member properties. You have something called alias. I have to give a name called quarter1, the complete name. Click on next. It would be January. So this is how you give an alias. Okay, alias is an alternate name. So generally we need, so say for example, I take this sample.
Sorry.
Okay, now say for example you take product. So you have all these product codes. So alias 110 is a product with the alias name called cola, and 120 is a product which is called light cola. 130 which is a name called caffeine free cola. Okay, so these are all the products which has alias names, so that it will easy for me to analyze. When you analyze your report, you do not analyze, we analyze with the member name, but it is difficult to understand what this product represents. That is the reason we give an alias name. Getting it? Understood?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, so that is the reason we need an alias name. Okay, so even if you see here,
But this is this alias can be used only to know them, right? It's not like when you report, when you run a report or something, we again have to use the names given here. So probably like 100-10, 100-20 or something like that.
Now, when you retrieve the report, you say, "Boss, show me the report with the alias name," so that Essbase will show you a report with the alias name as well, with product name as well as alias name.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
So both names will be support, sir, based on the systematically.
Yes, yes. Okay. Sometimes it so happens that the users would be across the globe. Say for example, you have some users in US, and for the same application, you have some users in German, for example. Now, German people, they don't understand. They'd say, "Boss, I don't want to see my name in English language. I want to see in my French language. Can you give an alias name as in French?" So we can still give a name in French. To do that, we have to create an alias table first. To create an alias table, I come to this properties tab. By default, you have a default alias table. I right click on this alias table and say create alias table. Say for example, I want creating an alias table for German people. Click on German, give a name or give a name here. Click OK. Come to outline. Now quarter1, go to edit member properties. By default, you have quarter1. Maybe German people, they are calling quarter1 as QTR, like this one. Okay, February, January, they are calling it as January. Okay. Okay, so then you give it a name to it. So when German people retrieves, they can choose whether they want to get an alias name from German or default. They would anyway select German, so that German alias name is shown to them in the reports. Clear? But here in the outline, you would be able to see only one alias name here at any given point of time. You will not be able to see both the alias name. So say for example, if you want to see the German alias name here, come to properties, right click on German and say set as active. You'll be able to see the German alias names in your outline. Okay, come to properties, right click on default and set as active. Now for us, for developers, we would be able to see only one active alias table. You can change it coming to properties and you can make anything as active here. So like this, we can create up to 32 alias names. 31 plus 1. 1 is already there, which is default. So which means that you can create 31 alias, more alias names. So how do you do it? Right click, create alias name. I want to give a name called friends. Okay, click OK. So like this, you can create up to 32. Right click, edit member properties, give a name for friends here. Okay, up to 32 alias names you can give, that is a maximum. So in earlier versions, in version 9, it was only 10. From 1112 they have changed it to 32. Okay, so verify it and save it. Okay, clear? Any doubts you have till now?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, great. So for any member that if you keenly observe here, for any member name that I give, that I create, I'm getting by default, you're getting a plus symbol here. Everything is plus. So these are called consolidation properties. So which means that if you want to, so for any member that I give, I'm getting a plus symbol here. Okay. So plus means that, so Essbase, these are called consolidation properties, and in Essbase we have different consolidation properties like plus, minus, into, divided by, percentage, tilde, and caret. So these are different consolidation properties that we can give for a member. So by default it is plus. So plus means Essbase will aggregate the data based on the consolidation properties that we have. So generally what we do, I say my sales in the month of Jan is 150, in the month of February it is 50, in the month of March it is 200. I'm not loading the data at quarter one. I'm not saying it is my, it is 400. I'm not saying it is 400 here at my quarter one level. Okay. So Essbase, what it does, automatically it will add up all these values based on these consolidation properties, and it will put the value as 400 here. You don't have to load 400, but Essbase knows that it has to aggregate the values based on the consolidation properties, and it will add up 400 here. You don't have to do anything. Okay, getting it? Okay, so if you say Jan multiplication, if you say this is multiplied into and this is division, so it would do this mathematical operators accordingly. So it will say 150, yeah, 150 into 50 divided by 200, that result would be gone to quarter one. Clear? Getting it, everyone?
Do we actually use those multiplication, the other symbols as well?
Yeah, for accounts we use it, but for other dimensions we generally don't use it. For accounts, now say for example, you have units here, and you have price here, you have net sales here. Okay, so my units is 10 units. I have sold 10 units at the price of 100. Now what is the net sales? It would be 1000, right? So what are you doing? You internally in your mind you are multiplying it. But what Essbase would, when this is plus, and by default this is also plus, so what Essbase will do? It will put 110 here, which is wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I have to change the consolidation properties from plus to into. Only then Essbase will multiply this and put that result in net sales as 1000. I'm not loading the data in net sales here. Automatically Essbase is aggregating the value. Clear? No? Understood?
Any
Okay.
kind of complex calculations that it does?
I'm sorry. What did you say?
Any complex calculations that it does in the sense
Yeah,
like
yeah, it does a lot of complex. We can write
percentage
complex.
of
Yeah, we can also write calculation scripts when you talk about. So here it does a simple calculations. All these these operators here. So if you want to do apart from this any other operators, take a small percentage of it and then you allocate it. Then you have to write a calculation script. Getting it?
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So then that we'll talk about later. But at this point of time, understand that these are different consolidation properties that we have. So if you put something as tilde here, for example, so tilde, what it does is that it will not take the value to my parent while aggregating the values. Now say for example, I put this February as tilde here. Okay. See tilde, what it does, it will not take the value to my parent. So it will say 10, it will come here, it is 50, that consolidation property says tilde, it will ignore it. It will come here, March as 200. So it will put the value as 210 here. Clear? It will not aggregate the value to the parent. It will ignore the value while aggregating the value to the parent. It will ignore that value. Getting it? You're able to understand?
Yeah, got it.
Okay, so tilde
Yeah,
means,
got it.
yeah, tilde means it will not take the value to the parent. It will ignore that value while aggregating the parent. While aggregating to the parent, it will ignore that value. the data would be there in this cell, but while aggregating it, it will ignore that value, and remaining thing it will aggregate and it will put that result in my parent. Okay, getting it? So Jan plus Feb plus March would goes to quarter 1, April, May, June would go to quarter 2. Okay, July, August will go to quarter 3. Okay, October, November, December will go to quarter 4. So this plus this plus this. Okay, so these are pluses plus here. These values, quarter 1 plus quarter 2, quarter 3 would go to that value to year total. Getting it? So that's how Essbase will aggregate the value. Now say for example, if you see this outline here, if you expand these measures, okay. So at the end of the day, you would get something called profit. So under profit, to get the profit, you have margin, you have sales and cost of goods sold. This is plus and this is minus. Okay, you have total expenses. Okay, so you get this sales minus cost of goods, you get to margin. Total expenses, you have marketing, payroll, miscellaneous. This would add everything and it goes to total expenses. You have inventory, which is still the property here. The value will not go to the parent. So this plus margin minus total expenses, you get to profit. Getting it? Inventory is tilde, it will not go to the parent, and ratio is also tilde, it will not go to the parent. It will not take that value to my parent. It will stop the value there only. So you get the profit. How am I getting profit? Margin minus total expenses, you get the profit.
Super. Great.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, right. Okay. Right. So that is how you that is how you prepare the hierarchy. Okay. So till here understood, right? Okay. So understood quarter 1 to quarter 4, what it is. Okay. What are the different consolidation properties? So what do you get when you say time as a time dimension? You get dynamic time series. Clear?
Okay.
Any doubts you have till now? Any doubts that you want to think of, or that you want to ask?
What are the other options that they have?
Which one?
Like when I click on anything, so click on any.
Yeah, you have edit member properties, generations, levels, dynamic time series, find members, replace, cut, copy, delete, add child, sort, split, all these things.
So levels in the sense like we can change the levels from here or what?
It will show you in which level generation it is, So
Okay.
clear now? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll stop it here for today, and tomorrow before I wind up, so I close this. Okay, I save this. Okay, I close this here. Okay. Now if you see any application here, okay, so big corp, if you see there is a green tick mark here, correct? And there is a into here. So into means this application is not started. So tick mark means this application is started. So if you want to work on any application, it has to be started. So right click and can stop this application as well. Okay, this application is stopped now. So which means that okay, we will not be able to work on it. You have to start the application. So how do I start this application? Right click, start
Right click
application.
and
So whenever you start the application, in the backend, it will start one process. Okay, when you go to task manager, it starts a process with the name called ESSSVR. So this is the process which starts whenever you start any application here in the backend, it will start this ESSSVR process, and there is a memory which is this amount of memory it is occupied for this application. So when you right click and stop the application, that ESSSVR process is also gone from the backend.
Is
That
it
you see.
like load balance?
No. That is a memory. Whenever you understand that, whenever you start any application, there is a memory which is occupied to that application, and the backend it will start a process called ESSSVR process. So whenever you are doing any operations, like you're say for example, um, you're taking you're stopping your services, and you are applying the patch. See to that there is in the backend also there is no ESSSVR process running. So sometimes that it happens that you have some ESS SVR process would also run in the backend. When you stop the application, okay, you have to there is a process which is in the backend which is runs ESS SVR process. You have to stop that manually. You have to end the process manually. Okay, so they'll ask you in the interview. Okay, can you tell me what is this process which runs when you start an application? It is ESS SVR process. Okay. So when you're trying to debug some issues, you have to see to that there is no process which is running in the backend for that particular application. So you right click and start that application. It would start that ESSSVR process. See, if you see. Clear now? Understood?
So for each application, it runs one USSR?
Yeah, yeah. For each application, it runs one ESSSVR.
Like if you activate two at a time, then
Now say for example, I start sample here, right click and start application. It will occupy some memory to it. Okay, so if you see, there's two ESSSVR processes run.
oh, the same name it starts off. Okay.
Okay, I stop this, it would stop that. Clear? So there is only one ESSSVR. Clear?
Okay.
Understood? Yeah. Okay, right. So I'll stop it here today. So tomorrow we'll again create some other dimensions. So we have created a time dimension. So in the same fashion, we would also be creating other dimensions that we have identified, like account, scenario, product, customer. Then we would, after we create the metadata, we would be loading the data into the Essbase. After that, we would be analyzing those using SmartView. So SmartView, when you install SmartView, you get as an add-in. This is called SmartView here in Excel sheet. So through SmartView, we would be analyzing the data in Excel sheets. Okay, clear?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can also practice taking the control of my system. So I've already installed yesterday. So you can also take the control of my system and you can practice it. So all your, I have also saved your student guide in my folder. You can go to this activity guide. Okay, you can go to the activity guide here and go to this exercise solutions if you want. And we are doing one by one solutions. Okay, we are doing one by one. So after you practice, just stop the services and leave the system as it is. Okay, I'm stopping the service. When you're practicing it, start the services, practice it, and stop the services.
Okay.
Okay, so before I wind up, I stop the service. You can start the services or stop the services in any fashion that you like. There is no order as such, but understand that for Essbase, you have to know what are the services that you have to start. If you do not remember what are the services to start or you don't know how to do it, you can also, there is a script which is already given to you when you install Hyperion. When you go to start, all programs, Oracle EPM system, I go to EPM system 1. Under foundation services, you have something called start EPM and stop EPM, which will also start the services. I would keep it as a shortcut here. Create shortcut. Okay, so double click on the start APM, it will start the services. Okay, when you double click on it, it will start, all the services would be started and that black screen would go off. When you stop the services, all the services would be stopped.
Okay.
You don't have to go to start, run and say services.msc here. Okay, and start the services individually like this. You don't have to do it. Okay, you just have to click on the start APM. Okay, all the services would start. So double click on it. Okay, so it will, black screen would, this would come and it will, this after all the services are started, this would screen would go automatically. Then you can log into the Essbase console and you can work on it. Okay, so I will also keep this console as also shortcut here. I go to start all programs. Okay, Essbase. Yeah, so double click on this console and you start working. Clear? Understood? So that's what it is. So this is a VM that I've created. So once you log in, this is my system. So once you log in, double click on this VMware machine, and there is no password to it. Just double click on VMware machine. It will start that VM, just then you'd get this and you start it, and then you log into the console and you work on it.
Okay.
Okay, so I would stop this here. I would close this
Sir,
here. Yeah.
server details, మీ సిస్టమ్ కనెక్టివిటీ సార్ ఐపీ సర్వర్ అడ్రస్
Server at this point of time.
లేట్ అయింది జాయిన్ అయ్యి ఇక్కడ క్లాస్లో.
Yeah, understood. Okay. So this is how you do it. I'm also sending you the recording class now. I'm stopping this recording now. I will also send you this recording classes.